Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to episode 1 of Spin Studios, where we'll discuss what's new with Google Workspace. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the questions panel, and we'll do our best to have them answered at the end of the show. We're still working from home here at Spin, so if there are any technical difficulties, just bear with us, please. Now let me introduce your host, Dan Barta. Dan, take it away.
Hey everyone, thank you guys so much for joining the inaugural, the first ever episode of Spin Studios. We're going to be doing this weekly. We have a few people on today. Really excited to speak with you guys, kind of share what we're seeing, with the topic of Google Workspace. A little bit of background on myself. I've been in the IT space for the last few years. I've actually been using Google Workspace for a very long time. Actually, was just sharing with everyone earlier how I got to be one of the first people to use it back in 06 when I was taking a summer class at San Jose City College. So kind of full circle. So really excited to speak with you guys today, share what we're seeing as the changes, and just really get your thoughts on what this change from G Suite to Workspace is, what it means, what it's gonna hold for you guys as the end users and for us as well. So now I want to pass it off to Jay for a quick introduction. Jay, how are you doing today?
Hey, thanks, Dan. I'm Jay. I've been in the IT space for a little over 15 years and about 5 years in the Google ecosystem, most recently with a Google reseller called Dido. Yeah, happy to be on today and love to hear people's thoughts around Google Workspace and maybe provide some good insight. We'll see. Who knows? So thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
Really excited to have you. We also have Darren Kimura on the line as well. Darren, how are you doing today?
Hey, Dan, thanks for having me, man. Congratulations on episode 1 here. I'm great. So everyone, hi, I'm Darren. I've been in IT since 1992, where I started basically at the University of Hawaii, where I'm from, and I was running the computer lab. And since that time, have been just, completely just amazed at how the world continues to change around IT. Cybersecurity became a problem, technologies became an issue. So as a result of that, I've kind of tracked my career, both from kind of a practitioner, but also as an investor. Looking at different trends and themes, investing in companies along the course of time. And just really excited to see what's going on these days with these kinds of collaboration platforms like Workspace, and to talk about them and to see where they're going to go. So this is a super great topic. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, really
happy. And thanks for also queuing me up with the Hawaiian shirt. I've got
yes.
a wardrobe of them.
I almost forgot. So yeah, that's going to be a reoccurring thing. Hawaiian shirts, because it is Aloha Fridays every Friday here at Spin Studios. So we're going to be wearing Hawaiian shirts. I get to show off my nice collection that I was told to throw away at one point in my life, but okay, I get to use them. So
they're vintage. They're vintage now.
I know. Somebody call my mom and tell her. But yeah, guys. Again, thank you so much, both Jay and Darren, for hopping on today, and everyone who's in the audience, coming and checking to see what we're sharing, so we can kind of just hop into it. So the first thing that we kind of want to talk about is more generally this change from from Google G Suite to Google Workspace. What does that mean? What are both of you? How is that affecting you guys in your day-to-day right now? And kind of what are you hearing just on this announcement that kind of came out of nowhere? No one really knew it was happening. I think it was earlier this month, like on the 3rd or somewhere around there, that just out of nowhere, hey, it's Google Workspace now. So, what are your guys' thoughts on that? How have you guys been liking the new features? I know they did a new design with all the logos. I was just, I think before this call, I was sharing with you guys, about 4 times, I thought I exited out of my mail client, but it's just a new logo. So, but what are you guys seeing? How has it been? What are you guys thinking about it?
Hey Dan, just real quickly, I just wanted to make sure, can you guys see my screen? I'm sharing that screen we were talking about to show some of the,
yeah.
Is that, okay, cool. All right, Jay, maybe you first, man.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, first of all, to say the term Google Workspace is hard. I'm trying to be very cognizant to lose the term G Suite, but other than that, yeah. Other than that, the icons, I'm still getting used to it. After we worked, in these tools for so long, we take for granted we know where everything is, especially if you're a heavy Chrome user and you've got 50 tabs open, you were always able to easily identify that Gmail tab or your calendar tab, and now it's just a matter of getting used to it. But I think it's still an amazing tool, and yeah, we'll come around to it, I'm sure.
I think for me, the logos definitely caught my eye. I know there's been a lot of discussion about them, ugly, great looking, new, different, whatever, it definitely stands out. I think that was one thing I noticed. But what I think for me, where I kind of paused was the name. It's so much longer now. G Suite was really efficient and easy to say, and even though G space suite, yeah, okay, that was a little bit weird. But now Google Workspace is so much longer. So, what do we do with that? Do we abbreviate it? Is it GW, right? GWS? I mean, I know that's stuff we've been kind of thinking about talking about with people in the industry. So I don't know where all that's going to settle down. I know Google probably wants us to just call it Google Workspace. So that one definitely jumped out to me.
Yeah, and for me, because I'm reaching out to a lot of people trying to talk about this. It's a big change. Yeah, going from that G Suite to Google Workspace, and like I was saying, Jay, you guys saw me struggle to get it out at the beginning of this, and it's really interesting. I mean, I've seen some people just call it Workspace, but it's different. So what I've really heard.
What do you think about that, though? I mean, because Workspace is used by other products out there, right? I mean, is that confusing?
So from what I've read, and kind of some of the stuff coming out from Google, as well as some other people in IT I've spoken to, is really the purpose behind this, at least in my mind, is to kind of, it's not a suite of products, it's a workspace, it's everything you need. I know a huge push with Workspace is the beefing up of the meet in the chat. So that's something that we use Meet all the time, but some people they're using Zoom, they're using GoToWebinar, they're using some other tool. So it's going to be really interesting to see what those changes have in store. I know that the chat is going to be a little bit more, you can talk to other people, talk to people outside of your organization. So I'm excited to see those things. As far as Workspace in general, those are probably the things I'm most excited for, just because that's going to be a cool new tool that we have in this suite of products.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Awesome. And I think too, when we start to see Workspace in its entirety roll out to the user base, I think it'll just flow more naturally that we call it a workspace, because the mobile client, will have email, chat, Meet, and Drive files all in one user interface. So you could easily bounce between all those, areas of the platform. But then that truly is your workspace. It's the only place, if you're a Google, business or enterprise customer, it's the only place you need to work in day to day.
Yeah.
One of the things.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is that's their end goal. They want it to be, this is your workspace. This is where you guys are coming to do stuff, and especially in this time when we're all working from home, and for the foreseeable future, I think that's really important too. They're trying to integrate everything, make it easier, because a lot of these tools, they were built for collaboration, and I think in us, working from home, we lose some of that. You lose that conversation, walking by somebody's desk. So I'm excited with this new integration, especially with the chat. Like I said before, just being able to speak to one another and kind of get that feeling back of, hey, we're really collaborating. So that's probably why they changed it to Workspace, because this is our workspace now. It's not a desk, it's not an office, it's a computer with these tools.
When you kind of brought up the idea of joining the show and talking about this, I started kind of thinking, well, what exactly is going on, right? Exactly to, I think, what you guys are getting to. It's not just really a change in the name or a change in the logos. It's not just a cosmetic change. There's actually a lot of stuff that's actually happening under the hood that's changing as well. And you see it all over the boards, right? Reddit, Slack, different channels. You see people commenting on how, for example, they're being or Google has introduced new tiers, new licensing tiers, for example, and now legacy customers will have to at some point kind of get into a new tier, and how that's going to impact them, which is, that's not going to be without some friction there. I mean, how do you guys think about that? I'm curious.
Yeah, I know we were talking about this a little bit before, and I think there's going to be some friction. With any tiers changing, people are, they're going to say, oh wait, what's going on? What's happening here? But my 2 cents on it is they are adding a lot of features, and I think they're really just trying to make this more. I don't want to say more of an enterprise offering because it already is an enterprise offering, but they're really trying to break this down so you can pay for the tools that you want. What are your thoughts, Jay? I know that you've kind of been living in this, like you said, you've been living in Google for quite some time. So what are your colleagues saying? What are the people you're close to? What are their thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think prior to Workspace, when it was G Suite, the customer had a little more flexibility. So, in other words, if they were a large organization that had over 300 users, they may have chosen to stay on the standard G Suite business and subsidize some of those tools, maybe with some legacy tools that they had. And now, if they're over 300 users, upon their renewal, they have to go to the enterprise option. So I think from an organizational perspective, it now limits the choices that you have, because it's very plain and simple. If you have over 300 employees, when you renew, you have to renew on the enterprise tier. So I think, it's going to change the way that, obviously change budgets for some customers for 2021, maybe change their go-to-market approach. Maybe the goal is to decouple some of those legacy tools that they had. So they've got a lot of decisions in terms of the technologies that they want to use moving forward and how they want to wrap that around G Suite. What they don't have is the choice of which tier to go on, essentially. So if you're under 300, you certainly have plenty of options, but over 300, kind of limited.
Hey Jay, what do you think about this? So I noticed that in the tiers that I have on screen here, I was looking at these caps here, and you got 30 gigabyte cap for the business starter, 2 terabytes for a standard, 5 for business plus. How do you think that'll impact existing customers, new customers?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it certainly is a lot of data per user. I mean, 2
True.
terabytes or 5 terabytes is a lot of data, but I think, we might use a lot more data than we think we use. Think about the documents. If we're an originator of a document and we share it, that's going against our storage limits. I mean, how many documents, do we share for business? We share a lot. So a lot. And I think, it's always been this, it's kind of been frowned upon in the enterprise space for a lot of customers to have restrictions on the amount of data that they have. They feel like, I'm paying, and essentially if you look at these business tiers, the business standard is what the price of G Suite Business used to be, but now they're restricted to storage. So you've got customers saying, wait, I'm paying the same price, but now I've got a storage limitation. So now you're kind of forcing my hand to go either to pay 50% more in price, or in some cases 100% more if I have to move to enterprise. So I think personally it's a lot of storage. I know for me as an individual user that would be enough, but if we look at some of these organizations with people that are consuming a lot of data, it may not be enough. Who knows? So I think they've got decisions to make for sure.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. And just kind of off the top of my head, looking at industries that maybe don't have that huge user count, that's over 300, like maybe, but they have a lot of data. So like photography, maybe like CAD design, so organizations that have a lot of those things. I think that's really that's gonna start hitting them, because maybe they have, there's 30 to 50 guys, at a firm, that does design, but they have terabytes on terabytes of data because they have to store all that. So, I could see that becoming an issue where, these small organizations all of a sudden are having to go from, hey, we were at, starter because there's, 20 of us. Now we have to do enterprise because we have so much data. Do you see, do you think that's going to be an issue, or, do you think there might be some wiggle room for those few individuals that, like I said, aren't hitting that number of 300, but have the data of, some of these organizations that have, 2,000 people?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And think about, all of the foothold that Google has gotten in the enterprise space over the last several years. I've worked with customers that were on the legacy Google Apps for Work platform and then migrated to G Suite. So in some cases have been on Google for, close to a decade. And then you think about, if you add up that storage, you potentially could be approaching some of these limits if you're a power user. So yeah, absolutely. I definitely think it's a concern.
Could catch them by surprise. Well, one thing
Yeah.
I did note as well is in the business starter, some of the APIs are not available that would be available in some of these other plans. So, where that could be a problem is some of the tools that require use of the APIs, they may not work anymore, right? I mean, and that could be a problem. So not only do I have to think about more storage, like going into a higher tier plan, I also have to think about the ecosystem of tool sets that I have around me. And I may also have to upgrade my plan because otherwise these tools I've already paid for not going to work.
Yeah. I think we were speaking a little bit earlier. I think it's, there's going to be a lack of like push notifications in that first tier. So, that could be something else that, hits these companies that, now all of a sudden their tools don't really work with their, mail client. And that could be a lot. I think that's where we're going to see the most friction. If I'm being honest, in this, again, just my 2 cents, when we're looking at, once you get hit over the 300, I think that's going to change some budgets. But I think the people that are going to be really affected are kind of those 2 groups that we just talked about, who are maybe using the lower tier, but they use a lot of API integrations. All of a sudden that doesn't work anymore. That's kind of an issue. Now they have to go upstream, or, they have a ton of data. So I think those 2 are probably going to be the most affected. We'll have to see. I feel like, users that are above 300, they might be able to do something. They probably have a dedicated Google rep, or, a reseller that's, can kind of walk them through this. But I think those 2 groups are going to be the most hit. Something else that we saw that was new was, and Jay, you had brought this up in a conversation we had earlier this week, was the new enhanced support and that they're rolling out, which is something new for I guess I almost said G Suite for Google Workspace. You want to shine a little bit more light on that, and kind of how you see that playing into things?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was an offering that previously was not available to customers, and now on the upper 3 tiers, you do have the option for enhanced support. Of course, it doesn't come with as complimentary. There are additional fees to it, and where I think this could truly have an impact on the marketplace is if we look at our reseller partners that are out there that are reselling Google. One of their large value propositions that a lot of customers used was that they could use these resellers for support, because they didn't have support prior. It wasn't even an option to them. So now it'll be interesting to see what the market does in terms of leveraging those partners. Is that going to continue to be the case? I think it will, because the partner is adding that level of a support essentially at no additional charge to the customer, right? So this may actually drive the partner ecosystem with Google to be a lot more attractive to some customers that were previously direct. I think that they're essentially getting enhanced support through the partner ecosystem, and all the partners, of course, are competitive and want to compete, for that business. So it's going to be some interesting times. I think Google may have just really helped the partner ecosystem by doing this.
Yeah, no, definitely. So that's an interesting take. I honestly was kind of thinking the opposite, that the support was going to pull away from that, but you have more experience there, and and you talking about that makes a lot of sense, because that is a value add that's free, that you get through Dido or whoever you're purchasing through. And I guess for the end users, to your point about it being competitive, this is going to shine a light on that support. And I think, at the end of the day, it's going to be good for the end users, because like you said, these partners are competitive. They're all going to, I could see, a scenario where now they have their extra support tiers, and we have X, Y, and Z certifications. I'm sure they already do that, but so it could be good for the end user at the end of the day, because now everyone's fighting to give them the best support. So maybe Google just helped a lot of people out right there. Who knows? We'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and see. We don't know what's going to happen. But moving ahead and kind of talking about some of the new things, and we touched on this earlier, wanted to talk and get your guys' thoughts on the new chat features. I know Jay and Darren, you guys had a chance to play around in the UI a little bit. I got to watch a couple demos. What are your guys' thoughts there? I know that a big push here is, people using tools like Slack and Microsoft Teams. that's kind of what my thought is, that's why they're beefing up this chat. So what are your guys, you guys got to play around with it. What do you like about it so far? What do you think needs to get more polished? What's good, what's bad, what's ugly?
Yeah, I love the fact that the new chat standalone application is a Chrome app. That's the first thing, because it's, obviously it doesn't have as much consumption in terms of memory and things of that nature. And of course, you still have all your privacy and security around the Chrome browser, because it is a function of that. There was a point in time, because I've been a long time user of Google Chat, there was a point in time that I had liked the app so much to the point that I stopped and disabled it from being integrated in Gmail. But now, even though the app is great, there's some additional functionality that only happens when you integrate the chat function, when you turn on chat within your Gmail web client. And that is, like, now you can set your status as away, and you can only do that within the embedded application in Gmail. So it was one of my long-term pet peeves, if you will, of having a standalone app, was that I could never go to do not disturb. It was like I was always online. It didn't matter if I was talking with people in Europe, and it was early morning for me, they saw me as available all the time. The only way that I had to disengage from chat was to be able to pause those notifications for a maximum of up to 8 hours. The messages still came in, of course, but I didn't get notified of them. But when you see your icon lit up, you tend to look at it. So now, having the ability to set myself completely away, I think that's a lot of people just go, so what? It's not a big deal. I personally think it's a huge deal to be able to let people know that I'm not accepting chat messages at this time.
Yeah.
My point of view is a little bit different, because I actually come from the world of Office, and I've definitely, as you know from my entry point, 1992, way before any of all of this stuff was available. I see this as being kind of unnecessary for them to complete the whole concept of like workspace, having it all integrated. It's what already exists, for example, in Teams. And Teams has the ability for video conferencing, chat, file sharing, all basically built into one place. And that's nice. So I think it's interesting to have. I'm still very much a Slack user, so I kind of like having that third-party application outside of the workspace environment to be able to interact with people. Jay, I think you had mentioned once before, now through chat, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you can actually have outside domains added into it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Previously, it was only, and it was one of the large complaints from a lot of my customers, was that they were having to run the legacy Google Hangouts app, as well as keeping chat in there, because they wanted to make the transition to chat, but they couldn't do so because they were too reliant on external communications. So what then happened was, because both apps were installed, they're getting notifications in both places. Now you can have one application that's supporting external domains. Anybody with a Google address you can bring in and have that functionality. So pretty nice. And I think too, where you mentioned about Teams, I think the one advantage that we're seeing in Gmail with all this functionality is, in Teams, you're still bouncing back and forth to your email. It's great for chat, it's great for file sharing, but you're still having to leave Teams to go into your email, right? Because last I saw, you didn't have any Teams integration, at least in Outlook. So whether you are in the web browser, you either had the 2 tabs, whatever. Here in Google, it truly is. I mean, now that I'm seeing the name, I'm thinking it really is the only workspace I need to be in during the day, because I'm getting email, I'm getting chat, I've got Meet right there as well. Everything in one place. So I can start my meeting from my Gmail client. I can join a meeting from my Gmail client. I can have my calendar up on the right ribbon bar. I still have my Salesforce integrations or HubSpot integrations. So, the name now, as I sit here and have a conversation about it, is just making a lot more sense.
Yeah. It makes you more dependent on Chrome, though, because unlike you, I don't like using Chrome for everything. So when I shut Chrome, I lose everything. Then I'm like, oh man,
right.
I gotta get back in.
I'm kind of the opposite of that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Teams is a client, right? You have to open up its separate client. So
that's how I use it anyway.
That's also something that's useful. about Workspace. It's clientless. You just log into, on Chrome, and everyone uses Chrome. Darren, you might not like Chrome, but I think maybe you're one of like 5 people in the last year
It
that
could
I've
be a
heard.
generational thing, my friend.
But all the people I know everyone's using Chrome. It's
Still
like,
generational. Yeah.
there's the running joke, at least among my friend groups, that's like, yeah, like, when you get a new computer, what's the first tool you use? Like, oh, you use Internet Explorer to download Chrome. Like that's so I think a lot of people are in Chrome. That's what I really like about it, because I don't like bouncing back and forth. I feel like you miss things. Even today in Slack, and I know Spin is a heavy Slack user, I'll miss some things because I'm in Chrome. I'm just going away, going through emails or going through my day, and then I'll check our Slack channel. I'm like, oh, I didn't see that. Like, whoops. Like, it's a message from 2 hours before. So it'll be interesting to see this integration. I think I'm gonna really like it. I used chat at a former company. That was kind of our Slack. We didn't have Slack. Everyone just chatted with each other inside the organization that way. So it'll be cool to kind of revisit that once it gets relaunched. But kind of moving in that same direction, talking about things that are getting beefed up, that are brand new, that Google's putting into this package, or like I said, beefing up, is Google Meet. So they have a lot of new features. I know just today they released, and Darren, actually you shared this with me, they can do backgrounds, and a lot of really cool stuff when you're doing in Meet. So you can look like you're at the beach or wherever you want to be. Happiness is a state of mind. So what are your guys' thoughts on these new changes? I know that we use Meet a lot, so this is really, for me personally, I really like that this is getting beefed up, because we were running into some issues, if you get a bunch of people on there. So, what are your guys' thoughts with Meet?
Go ahead, Jay. Yeah.
I think in the new work from home culture, having the ability to mask your personal life, for the most part. I mean, let's face it, I'm pretty fortunate that I have an office to work in, but there's a lot of people out there that have never really had to work from home. And so they've had to improvise and change their spaces, and it affects everybody. So the ability, the fact, now that they can be sitting at their kitchen table if they choose to, and be able to mask what's going on behind them, whether it's kids at home doing schoolwork, making their lunch, and while the parents are working, or whatever that might be. I think it's a great feature, and I think Google's had it on the roadmap for quite some time, but the COVID and the work from home environment has driven that to be accelerated. Traditionally, enterprise clients were in an office, and so it wasn't necessarily a high priority feature for Google to change the background, and this just accelerated a lot of things.
That's funny.
Yeah, as you
That
guys
makes
can
a lot
tell,
of sense.
I'm currently in my kitchen doing this, so that is really cool. I really like that, and I think it's like you said, because we're all working from home, I think that's what's really driving that, and we're seeing the even after this, I have a few colleagues that with their organizations, they're working from home almost indefinitely. They're saying, hey, you guys can come back September 2021, but and some of my closer friends are saying, they're speaking to managers, and managers are saying, like, yeah, but it's like, if you want to come in, we can kind of do this. So it'll be interesting to see how that, as we keep adding features. Another really cool one was that we were talking about before was the transcription and now translation. So I think that's fantastic tool. Jay, you were talking about it a little bit. Darren, I know that when we were speaking with some of the rest of our team, that they were really happy about it because they can do translations. Do you guys see that is going to be like a core feature that people really use, or is it kind of one of those things that we're looking at and we're like, oh, this is really cool, but we're not going to really use it? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna say, first of all, I think the backgrounds is interesting, but not honestly that super important to me. I mean, everyone else already does it, so it's kind of like a Me Too feature. I'm glad that they have it now. I feel like it makes my processor work harder, and I definitely hear the fan spinning a lot more when I turn it on. And clearly I don't have one on now, and I generally don't use one. So I guess at least in the way that I work, it's not super important. But I do think the translation capabilities that Google has when they integrate it with their overall platform is going to be super important, because I do a lot of business outside of the US with non-English speakers, and you know, having the ability for the mic to pick up what they're saying and translate it for me, that would be game changing, honestly, and a real very important enterprise type feature. I was on a call last night with Japan, and you know, I could only pick up a few words because they were talking so fast. But you know, we were trying to negotiate something, and it would be helpful to actually, you know, get a little bit of insight onto what they were saying. Gives us at least a little bit more reason to perhaps use Meet for those kinds of purposes as opposed to some of the other platforms. So I think that's going to be great when it comes out. I know it's available in beta, but I'd love to see that more readily available for all of us.
Yeah. And I think there was one key word that you said there, Darren, and that was enterprise. And I know Google took a lot of flack when the work from home initiatives all started because of features like that, right? But if you look at the other tools that they had, so the captioning has been there for quite some time, a feature that was demanded by enterprises as people were moving, traveling, you know, the ability to see what's happening on the screen maybe, and for accessibility purposes, right? So the workplace was driving that to help facilitate some people that may be hard of hearing. It was all driven by that. But what's most important, and I think where I'll defend Google on a lot here, is their philosophy was that they were starting with a very secure enterprise platform, right? So these tools like natural language processing API, which is now in beta coming out, you were talking about, captioning, the ability to do things like dial in by phone with international numbers, all those things were demanded by the enterprise with a firm security layer. So early on, when this started, some of Google's competitors, and of course, I'm not going to mention any names, had some significant issues with security. They had things like people coming in on a meeting that were unexpected. Google already had things in place where if you are not on the invite, as the moderator, or as the organizer of the meeting, you had to approve anybody that came on. That's an enterprise feature. People can't just jump on a Google Meet session unless they're on the invite. So unwanted visitors are not allowed. And then, of course, we saw the security vulnerabilities. And Google's philosophy the whole time was, we have a secure enterprise platform. Things like background blur, background change, those things will come in time. You know, they made priority on noise reduction because people were now working from home. So if you have kids screaming in the background, you could actually turn on that filtering and you wouldn't hear it. When they demoed it, the product manager actually took a bag of chips and the microphone and crinkled up the bag, and you didn't even hear the bag crinkle. You could hear his voice over everything. So I'm with you. It's about time they have it. And now I think we've all just become accustomed to web meetings, and you know, not a big deal. But these are now, when you take that secure platform and now you start adding the features, it's really making it a robust platform. And I think hands down, they'll be the leader going forward for virtual meetings.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you there. I like that part where they kind of did the security first. And I know we're kind of standing for Google right now, but you know, I think that that's really important. I had colleagues that dealt with those, you know, those security issues, had people jumping into calls. You know, my mom is a professor, so she had some of those issues when they first were starting to do stuff. So it's really neat that they have that security background first. I think that's what's going to set them apart. So it'll be interesting to see over the next, you know, year, 2 years, if people transition away from those, I wouldn't say legacy tools, but you know, those other tools, and you know, they start using Meet, or maybe there's organizations that don't really use video conferencing that now, because this is integrated in their, you know, Google Workspace, maybe that becomes something that they start doing. So it'll be interesting to see. I really like it. I've really liked the things that we've done before. I really like the backgrounds. I'm going to have to disagree with you, Darren. I think the backgrounds are really, really cool. Because like you said, people, you know, are working in different areas. You know, you maybe like, you know, if you're working in your home office, but it's also the spare bedroom, bed's unmade, or if you're working in your room, you know, stuff like that. So I really like it. I think it's also just kind of cool. It adds something that you can throw in there and kind of, you know, maybe you can, I think earlier when we were speaking, Darren, you guys were trying to trick me to see which one was a background. Everyone was changing their background. So I think it adds, you know, some fun to it. But so we've kind of talked a lot right now. We've talked about chat, we've talked about Meet, we've kind of talked about the general workspace as a whole. So kind of want to throw it out to the audience. Are there anything, we've been talking for a little while now. So are there any questions that, stands out? If you guys have any questions, you can do it in that Q&A section, but would love to hear, what you guys are thinking, what's, top of mind for you, or anything that we've said that maybe, you want us to dig deeper into. Any questions out there?
Yeah, so I'll just read through a few of them. The first one is, where can I go to keep up with Google's constant changes to Workspace?
Yeah, that's
you know
great.
what? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Dan.
No, I was about to say, Darren, you had that screen you were just sharing right there. The Google Workspace, what's new Google Workspace, that link, and we can put that in the comments or in the details of this video as well for people. But I think that's going to be the best place. If you guys can also come to us. We're going to be giving you guys a lot of information as new stuff comes out. Every Friday, you guys can come talk to us and hear what we have to say. But that's that site that Darren was on, the what's new with Google Workspace. That's going to be a good spot. They also have a pretty good timeline where they're showing things. I believe I was looking at earlier today through the beginning of December. Everything else isn't announced yet, but through the beginning of December, they have some dates for some releases. So that's going to be a good tool for you guys to stay up with anything that's changing in Google Workspace.
So just a couple more comments on that. I put the URL into the chat, but you can see it right here, workspaceupdates.googleblog.com. And then there's some really handy things. Like if you want an RSS feed, you can subscribe by feed, push it straight out to Twitter or into your Slack. And then you can also just get the email updates as well. So that's, they make it really easy to know what's going on and when.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that, Darren. Any other questions, Jeremy?
Yeah, so second question is, do you think 300 plus user companies will switch to Office 365 rather than renew at the enterprise level? Obviously, there's a cost to the switch.
That's a great question. Thanks for asking that. I maybe a few. I think people choose to be in G Suite or Google Workspace because they like it better than Office. Speaking from my own experience, I've gone from companies that we were in G Suite to then we were in Office 365. I really like G Suite or Workspace. Sorry, I'm still getting caught up with it. But I really like it. I think, and you guys can chime in as well, but I think they'll see a little bit of churn. But I think at the end of the day, people like Workspace. People enjoy these tools. They're heavily integrated. It's a very sticky tool. Imagine transitioning all of this data into Office 365. Then you got to go deal with Office 365's tiers and all that different stuff. They're E1, they're E2. What security features do you get? So I think it's a little bit more complicated on the Microsoft side. So I don't see a lot of people switching over. What about you guys, Jay? Do you think there's going to be a lot of people moving off of Workspace?
No, I'm with you, Dan. I think there's a certain value proposition that Workspace brings to organizations. And there's actually a third-party study that Google did. We'll have to dig it up somewhere, that actually says that G Suite users are happier users than Office users. It was a third-party study done. Of course, we all know third-party studies, but it was
Google funded that study, and that's probably the outcome. Yeah, I got it.
But they did poll various users, and the determination was that G Suite users are happier. But I think there's a correlation in what we're seeing, especially as the new generation of workforce comes in, where G Suite is very familiar to them. They're very comfortable with this. They've been using Drive for years. They've been working with Office files within Drive as a function of their schools, universities, whatever it might be. They're just comfortable with it. And I think that organizations are now starting to understand that Google is a true player in the enterprise ecosystem, especially coupled with the Google Cloud Platform advances that they're making, the sections of cloud, Google Maps, there's a lot of integrations with Maps and certain parts of the Google ecosystem. So it's just a familiar product and obviously Office is as well. But there's this mantra that Office is for, the enterprise, and the enterprise is changing. We're all at home, so there's just a lot of familiarity. Obviously, there's going to be some that are going to change. But I think that there's a certain value proposition that the majority of customers have made a significant investment, and that they'll be around for quite some time. And Google is putting, from what I understand, some plans in place to help transition those customers to that enterprise tier from a pricing concession perspective. So.
Well, that would definitely help a lot. I mean, I think through the course of this conversation, I've kind of emerged as a contrarian. I definitely think that there will be companies that will look hard and long at switching, but I do liken what's been going on very similar to the way that Apple attacked the markets back, 25 years ago when they started putting Macs in schools. And then as those kids graduated and got into the workforce, they became, devote, absolutely fans of Mac. And even though Mac is more expensive, generally speaking, than a PC, they're all using Mac now. And as a result, they've transformed entire companies into using Macs. I've seen that firsthand in our investments and companies I've worked with and for. So I generally agree, I think, with you guys here is that obviously there'll be some churn, but I think that the ones that are using it will probably end up staying and just kind of biting the bullet, especially though if they have a transitionary plan. If there's some way to make the cost maybe spread out over a year or two to help them get into these more expensive plans, yeah, that probably keeps them around.
Yeah, no, yeah, and I agree. And I could, imagine being that organization that's telling your workforce, hey guys, sorry, we're moving to Office 365, or we're moving to.
I mean, but that argument is not. I don't know if it by itself is right, because I mean, companies do that all the time, right? They switch. You've got Fortune 500 companies that over the course of a year will switch from Workspace or G Suite back in the day to Office or vice versa. So it happens, right? I mean, the reason why people often or large enterprises went to G Suite in the beginning was because of the massive cost advantage, and that cost advantage now is less because of the higher pricing. So I definitely think the economics will play into this somewhere. Yeah,
definitely. Awesome. Jeremy, any other questions that came through?
Yeah, I got one last question for you guys. How has Spin adapted to the Google Workspace changes for both the product and as an org?
That's a fantastic question. Yeah, so I think that with these changes, we have in place at Spin a lot of security features. So one thing that I wanted to touch on when we were talking about kind of the chat, there's a huge push to make things easier to share, and Google does have some security features around that, and they do pretty well. But we at Spin have a really robust data audit tool that allows you to see where those files are, who has access to them, who has permissions, and if they're public on the web. I think that's one thing that we're going to see a lot more organizations utilizing. I know a lot of people that use Spin use that, but as we get into this very heavy sharing, the thing that really stood out to me, and one of the, and I'm paraphrasing here, but one of the workspace, kind of project managers had mentioned that they're trying to make things easier to share with people outside of your organization, because that's business. But me in my putting on my security hat, that right there kind of raises a flag. If it's the easier things are to share, the more chance that it gets shared with the wrong person. So that's one way I think Spin is helping through that transition, making sure that those files are safe and secure, and they're in the right hands. Any thoughts, Jay?
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Oh, I guess we kind of answered it. Awesome. Was that the last question, Jeremy?
Yep, that was the last one.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much for those questions. We really appreciate them. And that looks like this is going to be kind of the end of our call today. Again, really appreciate you guys hopping on, Jay and Darren. It was a great conversation, and kind of funny how even though I like Workspace, I kind of came out of it liking a little bit more, now understanding why it's called Workspace. But guys, thank you so much. And to everyone in the audience, we are going to be doing this every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm going to be your host, Dan, the Hawaiian shirt man. So wear your Hawaiian shirts. It's going to be Aloha Friday every Friday here at Spin Studios. So really look forward to continuing these conversations, guys. And we're going to next week, or we're tossing on a few different things that we might be talking about. But if there's anything, everyone in the audience or anyone who's viewing this, if there's anything in particular you want us to review, or maybe something that we can go deeper into, please drop a comment after you've liked the video, obviously. Drop a comment and can let us know, like, what should we be talking about in the weeks to come. But other than that, guys, thank you guys so much for joining today, and I'll pass it off to Jeremy.
Okay, and just as a reminder, if there are any additional questions, comments, suggestions, you can send those to spinstudios@spintech.ai.
Awesome.
And that
Yeah,
does
guys.
it. Thanks everybody for joining, and we'll now end the session. Have a great weekend.
You guys have
Bye,
a
everyone.
fantastic Friday, okay?
See ya.
All right,
Bye.
guys.